tonight I'm gonna need you to keep time. Come on, just snap, snap, snap your fingers for me. Good, good, now we're making some progress. Come on, just tap, tap, tap your toes to the beat. And I believe...
What's going on, MMA fans? I'm back to do my UFC 126 Silva versus Belfort predictions, taking place February 5th from the Mandalay Bay, in Las Vegas on pay-per-view, and two of the Prelim Picks preliminary fights are on Spike. So, good night of fights, I think. This is a pretty solid card. We're going to get to see some interesting storylines, which I'll touch as we go through the fights. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Let me know what you guys think. For the Spike TV prelim card, I'll cover those fights on this video. And then anything below that, prelim-wise, I'll put my picks in the description side. I know a lot of people always ask for that, so I'll make sure to put those as well. Alright, let's work our way from the bottom up to the top. Chad Mendes versus Michihiro Omagawa. Mendes, solid wrestler, has really improved on his hands. His boxing has improved. We've seen a lot of progressions there. Trains with the guys, out of Team Alpha Male with Uriah Faber, Joseph Benavidez, those guys. But he's, a hard worker, good cardio, pushes the pace, very quick, explosive. Has a lot of, potential, I think, to be a guy that I think, and I know a lot of other people say, could possibly be a contender after a few more fights. Omagawa, we know what he's good at. Judo player, judo black belt, really has been on a tear and dream. Good kickboxing, good grappler on the ground. Was very good in scrambling situations, able to get back to his feet. This is going to be an interesting fight stylistically on both guys. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth affair. But I think the X factor here is Mendez's hands have improved. He's used a really, really good jab in his last couple fights. Both these guys are quick, but I think that Mendez's wrestling base, I think Omagawa is going to have a hard time closing the distance and clinching. And if he does try to move in, I think Mendez will be able to land some combinations and throw Omagawa's timing off. So I think this one's going to be close. I think we're going to see this fight in some different positions, whether it be in the clinch, on the ground, standing. But I think Mendez will pull this one out. Split decision. Chad Mendes, possible fight of the night. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Paul Kelly versus Donald Cerrone. And my phone's ringing in the background. Ignore that. Paul Kelly, good Muay Thai. Okay kickboxing. I would say that, not okay kickboxing, decent kickboxing. Okay takedown defense. Okay grappler on the ground. He's taking on a guy that, I think in this fight, the better technical striker, has a good Muay Thai base, very good grappler, whether it be with his top or his bottom game with his jiu-jitsu. He's able to get dominant positions on top of you and look for subs, as well as if you make a mistake inside of his guard, he's able to catch you. So I think Donald Cerrone will be able to land, combinations in this fight, look at some clinch situations, land some combinations and hurt Kelly. I think he'll be able to do that. Eventually hurt Kelly, follow him down to the ground, either TKO him or sub him. I'll say he probably subs Paul Kelly. Late first, early second, Donald Cerrone. One of the other interesting things is probably one of the other few fights where you could say that, throughout Donald Cerrone's career, it might be one of the few you could say he possibly has the better offensive wrestling. That's another interesting little tidbit. So, but I'm going to stick with that pick. Donald Cerrone, late first, early second round submission off of, being able to pick apart Kelly on the feet, getting him in a clinch situation, landing some knees, maybe some body shots, hurting Paul Kelly, and then finishing him on the ground. All right, on to the main card, Antonio Benuelos versus Miguel Torres. Antonio Benuelos doesn't get a lot of credit as far as, who he is as a fighter, his wrestling base, his hands. He's got knockout power. The only thing that I think that, people do mention, and I think this is a valid, point on a couple of things, but he's had some cardio issues. He has had some, camp issues off and on, as well as some, issues with the clinch. And Miguel Torres is a guy that has a good clinch game. He's got very good kickboxing. He's a talented grappler on the ground with his top or his bottom game. He's a BJJ black belt. If Benuelos is able to keep this standing, avoid clinch situations, and try to land some technical shots, I think he could give Torres some problems. I don't think Benuelos will try to get Torres down immediately or a lot. I think he's going to pick those opportunities to not try to get into any type of grappling situations where he might get caught. But I think what's going to happen, I think Torres will be able to land some combinations, close the distance on Benuelos, possibly getting in a clinch situation, land some knees, land some elbows, which he's good at doing, hurt Benuelos, follow him down to the ground. I think he's going to TKO him. So that's going to be my pick. I'm going to take Miguel Torres, late second, early third round, TKO. Could even be a submission if he hurts Benuelos and goes for a dominant position and looks for a sub. But I'm going to say TKO, Miguel Torres. I think stylistically it's a fight that favors Torres, so that's going to be my pick. Ryan Bader versus John Jones. This is one of the fights I was talking about, has an interesting storyline. Both these guys are moving up at the light heavyweight division at 205. This is a fight that really puts either guy in that spotlight of this is the next guy that really is going to make a possible run or get to that point of the top 5, top 4 of the division. And Bader has looked impressive in his last couple fights. He's got a solid wrestling base. He's improved with his technical boxing. He's always had power in both of his hands. We saw that against Keith Jardine. We saw some improvements with Bader's clinch positioning and his wrestling and his transition from striking to wrestling against Little Nog in that fight. But one thing that still sticks out to me with Bader is still a little bit of the cardio problems that he does have in some fights. And against a guy like John Jones, he cannot, tire himself out trying to, just land power shots. He's going to have to be able to be technical, mix in his wrestling. And I think the one area where John Jones might have some advantages is if Bader tries to go in for some takedowns as Jones is near the cage. Jones is able to grab a hold of Bader and maybe, get a single or a double underhook, get Bader down, and try to, use some dominant positioning. I think Jones is the more technical striker. I think that he's more athletic. His unorthodox style does throw guys off. And I think that in the clinch, I think that's where Bader needs to look out for. I don't think that it'll be smart to try to close the distance and grab a hold of Jones. I think mixing your wrestling in with some combinations, faking a shot, landing some combinations, which he did pretty well against Nogueira off and on. If Bader's able to do that, I think he can pull this fight out. But I think that John Jones, just those things alone, the technical striking, the clinch positioning, and the athleticism, I think those things all play a major part in this fight. And I think that Bader will eventually get sucked into trying to close the distance. Jones, I think, will be able to grab a hold of him a few times and toss him, get him down, have some dominant positions. I think Jones will do enough in this fight to take 2 rounds and win a unanimous decision. So that's going to be my pick, John Jones via UD. Jake Ellenberger versus Carlos Eduardo Rocha. Ellenberger, a talented wrestler, blue belt in BJJ, decent hands. Rocha, I was really impressed with the grappling that he displayed in his last fight. I mean, he is a BJJ black belt. He's very, very talented on the ground. He likes to go for different positions as far as either heel hooks, knee bars, leg locks. He's got a pretty good guard as well and a pretty good top game. He's got decent hands. And we saw the progression of that as far as his just how good his I don't know what I was trying to say there. Progression. Let me reverse that. We got to see how good his grappling was against Chris McRae when he pulled that knee bar off. And I think that this is an interesting fight, that if Ellenberger can keep it standing, avoid clinch situations, avoid making a mistake and allowing Rocha to be able to get him down to the ground or capitalize off a mistake, Ellenberger stylistically should be able to land some pretty good combinations to keep Rocha at bay. But, Ellenberger has made mistakes. He has, not completed takedowns properly in the past. And it has, caused some issues for him, without a doubt. So, I think that in this fight, I'm going to go ahead and take Rocha by a submission, just based on the fact that if Ellenberger is, gets overzealous with some of his combinations, even maybe with a takedown and gets sloppy, maybe getting, a little tired on the feet, maybe losing an exchange standing, that he tries to go and shoot for a takedown, I think that he will get possibly caught in a mistake there, or if it even clinches up, there's a possibility there that he could run into some situations. So I'm going to say that Rocha wins. Second round submission off of a Jake Ellenberger mistake. Again, stylistically, I think Ellenberger, if he's able to keep the standing, move side to side, not allow Rocha to be able to clinch or capitalize off a mistake, or not have any sloppy takedowns, Ellenberger should be able to win this. But I'm going to go with that pick. I think that Rocha will be able to get another sub. And beat Jake Ellenberger. Definitely a guy that I'm excited to watch at 170. He's got a very, very good base with his jiu-jitsu, with his top and his bottom game, so that should be interesting. So that is my pick. Rocha, second round sub over Jake Ellenberger. Forrest Griffin versus Rich Franklin. I watched the countdown, or I don't know if it was countdown, but the preview for this card, and both these guys were talking about they have similar styles. And I agree with that to an extent. Both guys are similar in the way that they fight, but I think there's a major difference between both of these guys. One, I think Forrest Griffin, people talk about, well, he has knockout power. I don't think that's necessarily 100% accurate. I think that Forrest Griffin has technical striking. He's a good kickboxer. He can, land combinations after combinations that eventually start to wear you down, and as that happens, he starts hurting you. Rich Franklin has the capability of knocking you out with one punch. And what I'm saying, let me break this down, because it may sound like I'm saying that, well, Forrest Griffin couldn't, ever knock anybody out. He most definitely can, but when you look at the odds and the way that these guys fight, Forrest Griffin primarily is a punches and bunches kind of guy. He likes to, outstrike you. He likes to land combinations in and out of the pocket, throw leg kicks, throw your timing off, and wear you down throughout the fight. And as, he does that, that's when he starts to hurt you. Rich Franklin has a similar type of style, but has the ability and has the capability of knocking you out with one punch. I mean, he has that type of power. So I think that's the big difference that separates these two in this fight. Otherwise, they're very, very identical. They both have, good grappling on the ground. They're both pretty, decent in the clinch. They both like to throw combinations and wear guys down. But I think the big difference in this fight is Rich has the ability to counter and land very, very strong shots. And I think that will be the difference in this fight. And I think that, Forrest will get hurt. I think that Rich is going to be able to, absorb some of the combinations that Forrest is going to throw. I think you're going to see some back and forth exchanges, but I think Rich is going to land some, good counters that are going to hurt Forrest. And eventually he's going to catch him with one flush, hurt him pretty good, follow him down to the ground. And I think Rich Franklin actually TKOs Forrest Griffin, so that's going to be my pick. Rich Franklin, second, third round TKO. Again, both these guys, very, very similar skill set wise, but I think the big difference is what I just described. Is I think that Rich has those power type of shots that he will throw. Forrest is more of a guy that tries to wear you down and pick you apart little by little by little and then hurt you. But I think that Rich will be able to land some strong counters, hurt Forrest, follow him down to the ground, and eventually TKO him. So that's going to be my pick. Rich Franklin, late second, early third round TKO. All right, on to the main event. Those of you that watched my MMA year-end awards video, I talked about that, you guys are going to be in for a surprise pick. And I'm going to break this fight down, and then I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. Some of you may be surprised with where I'm going on this pick. I'm going to try to explain this, because throughout this video, I felt like I haven't explained these fights real well of why I'm picking them. Hopefully this makes sense with these picks that I've made. I don't know what's going on with my head today. But anyways, Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort. Neither guy has really fought a striker like the other. And I think that is a true statement for both these guys. Anderson really hasn't fought a guy like Vitor, and Vitor really hasn't fought a guy like Anderson Silva. There's a lot of factors that you have to look at this fight that, you know, may lead some to pick the way that they pick, that you cannot ignore certain factors. It may not mean that much to others in picking. Both guys BJJ black belts. You know, I really don't think we're going to see this fight on the ground at all, let alone, you know, either guy making a considerable mistake for it to be put into that type of a situation. I think we're going to see a lot of tentative parts of the first round, and then it'll slowly start to pick up in the second. Well, you know, after both guys have, you know, felt each other out, tried to see, you know, how their timing is with each guy. And as the fight progresses, we're going to start to see both guys open up. I think second and third round, those two rounds are going to be the rounds where we're going to see the fireworks as well as a stoppage. Now, let me break down how I see the fight going. Well, actually, hold on. Let me break down both these guys, talk about what I was mentioning at the beginning of this, and then break down how I think the fight's going to go. Let's do it that way. Anderson Silva is excellent at countering. He's got good head movement. He's got a solid Muay Thai base, very good in the clinch. You know, some good leg kicks, good body kicks, talented on the ground with his grappling. He's not a slouch there with his bottom game. He's dangerous if he can get on top of you. You know, and he's a guy that is very difficult to gauge in time distance on. That's, yeah, I think all those things perfectly describe Anderson Silva. And it's one of the reasons why he's been on a tear at middleweight. Vitor, what you can describe about him, speed, combinations that he throws. He slips in and out of the pocket probably better than anyone at 185 pounds. And maybe in mixed martial arts, he might be one of the few guys that is able to close the distance the best, the way that he does it. He's very good at that. His footwork has improved. We've seen, you know, progressions, even though it's been glimpses in the Lindland fight and the catchweight fight against Rich Franklin with his footwork and his speed. It looked better. It looked a lot better to me, at least, as compared to past fights back in the day. So I'm saying all these things to say that both of these guys have not fought one or the other similar. And they both have a stylistic setup that technically can hurt the other. However, I think there's a big key here between the two of them, and it kind of applies to both of them a little bit. Vitor really hasn't fought a striker in his last couple fights anywhere near Anderson Silva's level, and Anderson Silva has not really fought a striker, a real considerable striker, since Rich Franklin, that had, you know, considerable boxing and a decent clinch game. But I think the factor that plays in this fight to me the most is speed. And I think Vitor is the faster guy. I think that his ability to close distance, I think his ability to get in and out of the pocket will be a problem for Anderson. And let's be realistic. Anderson's counter-striking could easily give Vitor problems. But when you look at what he did to a guy like Forrest Griffin, Forrest is not anywhere near the speed of Vitor. You know, when you look at what he did to James Irvin, these guys are guys that are not the same type, you know, of fighter speed-wise, nor the type of boxing that Vitor possesses and throws. And that is why I am going to take Vitor Belfort in this fight. I think that he will be able to close the distance. Anderson will back away. He's not going to want to rush in there and exchange with Vitor. He's going to try to counter. But based off of that, I think Vitor will be able to close the distance, move in and out, land some shots. I don't think that he will win the first two rounds, but I think he's going to be able to land enough combinations and enough damage that in the third round, when he lands, I think, some shots, some pretty considerable shots, he's going to hurt Anderson and be able to follow him down to the ground and TKO him. hopefully what I just said makes sense. This is a close fight on paper. When you look at it, both of these guys have skill sets that hurt the other. But I think the main factor in this fight to me is speed and Vitor's ability to be able to close distance. And I think that alone, when he lands, the combinations that he lands in, just, I mean, he can throw 6 to 10 punches in a matter of seconds. And that is what is dangerous about him. You know, and he can also be technical. He can jab, jab, 1-2, jab, jab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he just explodes. And that is why I think that throughout the part of this fight, he will be able to land some combinations that will accumulate damage, and then he's going to land some very considerable shots towards possibly the middle part of the third, late part of the third, and he will eventually hurt Anderson. He'll capitalize on a position, and he will not let up and be able to TKO him, and Vitor Belfort will become the new middleweight champion. So that is my pick. Hopefully it makes sense what I just said. I wanted to really go into depth about that and break it down so that you understand where I'm coming from, why I'm picking that fight the way that I am, and why I'm looking at it stylistically that way. So that's my pick. That's what I think is going to happen. Let me know what you guys think. Leave me some comments, constructive, negative, positive, as always. I will be back to do a review on this one, so look out for that. And you guys, take it easy.